A year ago today, we released Mycelium Days, our second album on Apollon Records, a Bergen-based prog-oriented label. And today I thought we'd talk a little bit about how that got made. So even though all this started back in 2006 as a solo project, it was in 2017 we became a band. That's when Leon joined on guitar, Vegard on bass, and Paul on drums. And because Leon is so connected, we got in touch with Emil Nikolaisen, who runs a very well-known underground studio here in Oslo called Malabar. However, there were some obstacles. Our biggest issue was that Vegard was leaving for Africa. He was going away for 8 months to do a research program. We'd booked 3 days in the studio, and Vegard was going away the very next morning after that third day. So we only had this small window of opportunity to get this done. The other issue was that, unbeknownst to Emil, they'd started some construction work right above his underground studio, and there'd been a huge water leak and some damage to the studio, but it was still possible for us to record in there if we did it in the evenings when it was quiet. The other problem was that I just moved houses, and within 3 weeks of moving into the new house, they start blowing stuff up right outside my window. Construction work, building like 3 huge buildings right next door. So there'd be a whole year before I could even start considering recording anything here during the daytime. So things were a bit postponed, safe to say. Through some mutual friends, we get in touch with a very experienced mixer called Nick Terry. He worked his way up in various studios in London. He's even worked with names such as Talk back in the day, I think. He's got these wonderful studio full of analog equipment. He also runs this company called Thermionic Culture. They have loads of tube-based gear like preamps and equalizers and compressors. Grade A stuff, and he's got a whole Neve desk set up in there, and over 3 weeks flat out working in the mixing room with the Nick, some wonderful sounds start coming out of these great recordings. If you listen to the lyrics, there's no way around that. This is about quite sort of large issues. Like life and death. Is there life after death? What's the meaning of all of this? Even down to the level of, what's even out there? What is reality? Can we trust what we see? Is this really there, On the other hand, there's obviously just some plain midlife crisis going on here, worrying about if you made the right choices. This little nagging voice in your head telling you that, you should have achieved more or should have become someone else. Musically, I think it's more progressive than the previous album, whatever that even means. But I think once you make a 22-minute long song, there's really no other term for it. That's not to say that this album is retro in any way. There's still those electronic influences from the 90s. And at the end of the day, I think it sounds uniquely like us. Now, some people have, of course, interpreted this to be about psychedelics. But for me, this whole fungal theme thing, it's got more to do with things happening out of sight, underground, behind the facade, things that are growing deep down, even in your subconscious. But it could be in a very literal sense as well. I mean, I've always been overly concerned with stuff growing behind the walls of my house, for example, because you never really know, what's going on behind that wall. There could be stuff growing back there right now. Now, since we're a new and unknown band, I really only had one ambition for Mycelium Days, and that was to get at least one review. And we did. We got loads of reviews. And, I was not aware of this whole world of blogs and magazines out there with people taking time to listen intently, to write articles. We're very grateful. Without it, we wouldn't have been able to reach any of the listeners that we have today. You realize that there's a whole scene of bands like us out there at this tier where you have a few hundred up to a few thousand fans and listeners that doesn't really get the attention it deserves. On the other hand, it's just mind-blowing that anyone would pay attention to our music on one level, even though, I believe in it and I trust in its quality and it's heartfelt. It will always be surprising that, someone else also cares. I've chosen What If to play for you today. It's one of these songs that was left over unfinished from 2007. Back then, the chorus and the verse were actually parts of two different songs. But in 2016, I started fitting these two together and found it worked really, really well.
And I'm always on my own. I reap the seeds that I have sown. I find my way and that's alone. There'll be no heiress to the throne. no